pause the video. Same for the next positions, I won't repeat that every time, but you can always pause the video to look for the moves. You can notice that white is up 2 pawns and black has doubled pawns. So white has an advantage, but it's not so easy to break through the pawn structure. And actually there is only one move that wins, and it's c4. And it's based off the idea that if you take with the pawn, pawn takes c4 check, you can sacrifice the rook with rook takes c4 check, because on pawn takes you have king takes rook, and now you're completely winning, because if you move the pawn forward you can just go back with a king and win it, and if you don't and you try something else, for example king to b6, you have b5, and then you're going to come here and take the pawn, and even if you tried something like this, for example king takes, you're completely winning. You don't have anything to worry about. You can even push this pawn. King takes pawn. You go over here, you're still 2 pawns up, or just 1 pawn up, but that's going to be enough to win the game because of the double isolated pawns and the king's positions. This king is very active. This king is not doing anything. So if we come back a couple moves, we had this position with this rook over there. You see that this rook is very poorly placed. So our c4, if pawn takes c4 and rook takes, if you try not to recapture this pawn, this rook, for example king to b6, there will simply be rook to c5, guarding this pawn, cutting off the king. This rook is completely stuck on the side of the board, and you're threatening to go over here and win these 2 pawns. And again, if you win these pawns, you will have a large pawn majority, and you will win the game easily. So after c4, the only move that basically remains is not to take this pawn with for black. For example, king to b6, but after king to b6 there is pawn takes, and you cannot even recapture this pawn. This rook is under attack by the king, but if you recapture this pawn, there is rook to c5, chasing the king away, and then you lose the rook. So you would be forced to move the rook back, and you would, after this you would have a4, and there is like these 3 connected passed pawns supported by the king, the rook very well positioned. This would be a very nice position for white, much more than a very nice position, a completely winning position. So that's basically it. If you want, you can try rook 8 now, but again you can, if you take over here and I take, you have for example a4 just chasing me, king goes back, the rook is very active, and now you have 2 connected pass pawns, and you're still, there is still 7 pawns for white against 5 for black, so you're still two pawns up, and not just any pawns, 2 connected pass pawns. That should be enough to win the game. So that's the first position down. Let me set up the next one. Next one with king on f1, white pawn on h3, black pawn on h6, and I believe the king is on f4. And it's white to play and draw the game. By the way, these are games that comes from my own games. This one was in a bullet game, and I remember losing this one because I thought that I could go king to g7 and maybe save there is h5, and if you come with the king, there is h4, and then the black king protects the pawns and attack the other pawn as well. So there is actually nothing that you can do, because if you know a little bit about endgames, in this type of corner pawns, you can draw the game if you can place your king on one of these 3 squares, and we are going to see why in a moment, because the correct move to draw the game is going to transpose into an advantageous version of this one. So this would have been losing. So instead you want to play either king to f7 or king to e7, because now if the king moves, you can move to e6, and king moves away. You have king to e5, and you maybe can see the idea is that now you get to f3, to these 3 squares in time. And the key difference is that you started from here, and in the other line you went 1 move, 2 move, 3 move, 4, 5 and 6. And because the king was over here, you could you could not go over here, so you had to waste the tempo, and you basically had to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 moves if you wanted to reach this square. This way you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves, and you reach this square in 5 moves, because you just basically went up the board, but you had to avoid black king that was in your way. And here it's an easy draw if you know the technique. King h2, king f2, if the king moves you just follow him wherever it goes. If the pawn moves, you follow it as well. And this is a stalemate, so it's a draw. And if when you're in a position like this, and the king goes back, you can just play king to g1. And now you're just going to stay on these 2 squares, and black has no way to move you away from this square. For example, this is check. You have king to h1, and this would put king to h3 to protect the pawn. Would be a stalemate. And if you move away, you just take the pawn and draw the game. So that's an elementary draw. So just to put the position back once again, the idea is simply that 1, 2, 3 moves, 4 and 5 moves, whereas when we went this way, maybe not exactly the same path, but you had only 5 moves to reach this position. Alright, here is our next position. Again, it's white to play and win. You can see that white has 4 pawns against 3, but black is threatening to win this pawn, and if it wins this pawn, it could go and promote. So we have some problems over there, and even though you have some ideas of maybe bringing your king over there, and you have this pawn majority, black king can, for example, abandon this pawn and run to this side of the board to defend and win a pawn over there, while king would be distracted trying to take this pawn. So that would not be a good idea. So we need to find a way to gain some time, and the move is actually h4. For a very simple reason, is that after king takes, there is no g4. If you take the pawn, you play f5, and now whatever you do, you are going to lose easily with black. like if you take this, you can just push the pawn and go promote. The blacking is way too far away, and white is in front of the pawns. So if black moves these pawns, either of these pawns, the king could either step in front of them or take them. There is no problem, and this pawn is going to promote. Wait. Let me. This was f4, king takes. We had, and g4. If pawn takes, and you push, and you try not to take and bring the king in. F6 would be a draw because the king is into the square, can step into the square of the pawn, and would be in time to stop this pawn. But we have pawn takes g6, and now the king is no longer into the square, and you can promote over there. So that does not work either. I'm confused every time there. So we had, this was the initial position, h4, king takes does not work because of g4. So instead, what black can try is to bring the king back in. And now, g4 would actually be a big mistake, because you could take, and now blacking is close enough, so h5 and f5 don't work. If you play f5, you can just take, and now the king can step into the box. So f5 would be a mistake, but black is going to be threatening to move. So if you cannot move either of these two pawns, nor this pawn, you're basically forced to move this king over there. You have king to e4, king to g3, and now king to f5. And this is a zugzwang, because if you push the pawn, I'm just going to take, and I'm going to be in a winning position. Well, black is going to be winning. I'm not especially the one playing with black. And if you move the king anywhere, I'm going to win this pawn. I'm going to win this pawn, and again I'm going to be in a completely winning position, because I have an extra pawn and I have enough activity with the king to save that. So if we go back again to the starting position, h4, it was king d5, and g4 does not work in this position, but we have king to d3, taking the opposition to the king, and now the king steps back. It's forced to step back on one of these three squares. You can go king to d4. If you have king to d6, you have this reserve tempo g3 to gain the opposition back and to force the king to move either on one of the two sides. And if the king moves over there, you go here and win this pawn. And if the king goes over there, you go here and you're going to win these pawns. And if you can win any of these pawns, you're just going to win the game easily, because you're one pawn up, don't forget that. So that would be 2 pawns up, with the pawn relatively far backwards. There is no way to save that for black. Alright, this fourth position is actually not from one of my games, but it's from a title Tuesday game between Grandmaster Anton Korobov from Ukraine with the wild pieces, and Grandmaster Vugar Rasulov with the black pieces. And in this position, Vugar Rasulov took this pawn and went on to lose the game because of Rook 2, E8, check. The king cannot escape because of this pawn which controls G7. So without this knight it would be checkmate. The knight can take the rook, but now you have F7, threatening to promote over here and threatening to take knight and promote. If the king goes to G7, you take and you promote. Now there is still some counterplay, and there is still, you still have to win this, to know how to win this, because you basically have a knight and a queen against the rook, so it should be fairly easy, but there is still spawns, so it still requires a little bit of technique, but this is completely winning. And in this position, if you try to save the knight, you can just queen, and yeah, this requires a little bit more technique, because now you have a queen for the rook, and you have a knight and a bishop, so this is completely winning, but you still need to win it. That was a very nice move, this rook sacrifice, rook to e8, threatening checkmate, and if you take with the knight, f7 wins the game. Alright, and for the last position, we have another rook endgame from one of my games, and there is once again only one move for white to win this, and I did not find it in my game, although it's not that difficult, especially once you know it's there. The move is rook to b5, stepping right where the pawn can take the rook. But if you have pawn takes rook, you have b7, and this rook cannot come to a8 to prevent the promotion, you would just take the rook. So if you try to push, you just promote, and you're going to win this game. And if you try anything else, I'm just going to push this pawn and promote on the next move anyway. So there is nothing that black can do to stop that. So again, a rook sacrifice, maybe less surprising, easier to find, but still a nice idea to just force black to put one of its own pawns as a defender from this pawn, because you would very much like to play rook b2 to defend, but you have your own pawn in the way. And if white does not do that, then you can play rook to b2 and prevent this. And despite being one pawn down in a rook endgame, one pawn can be really difficult to win with only one pawn up, if you know the proper technique, like the field door position and this kind of stuff. But with more pawns on the board, it's even easier often, because you can just make a blockade with the rook and the king. So that was it. I think that's a shorter video than usual, but that was 5 endgames that I wanted to show you, because I really like endgames. I don't think that I chose the most interesting endgames. I have a bank with a lot of positions that I want to show you, but I wanted to make a quick video because I don't have much time today, and I want to upload one video every 2 days. So this is a quick video to satisfy your needs if you want to see some ASMR and chess, and maybe you managed to learn something. I hope you did, and that you enjoyed this video. And on that note, I wish you a good day, a good evening, a good night. Bye bye.